Hey guys, welcome to No Mama Grow Mama. This is the place where we talk about all things related to health and wellness for your family. So whether it be your physical health, whether it be your mental health, spiritual health, overall well-being, we talk about everything on this show. So today's episode of No Mama Grow Mama, I sat down and talked with Liz, who is a homeschooling mom just starting her journey with homeschooling. So this is actually part one of two different parts that we're going to do on sort of alternatives to traditional education. Not that we're trying to sway people in one way or the other, but information is key, right? Sometimes, even if you're not interested in homeschooling, you can take things away from it and learn from it to use in your own life. Doesn't mean you're going to homeschool yourself, but hopefully you can take some information away from it. So yeah, take a check out of this episode and let us know what you think. Did you enjoy this episode? Did it help you? Did it not help you? I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, Jen Matthews here to Salsa Mama at Salsa Babies. Welcome to our episode of No Mama Grow Mama today. So this one I think is going to be kind of fun for you to watch. We're doing a series on schooling. And I think it is probably a hot topic depending on where you fit in the schooling box. So this will be part one of 3 different conversations we're going to have on this show in regards to schooling. So we're sitting down with Liz today, and Liz homeschools her children. So today's episode is going to be all about learning about Liz's family's experience with homeschooling and probably some basic information on homeschooling in general, just so we get a better idea, because it's all about learning, right? Okay, Liz, why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know sort of who you are?
So hi guys, I'm Liz. I've been homeschooling for about 3 years. My oldest is about 3 years old, and I have a second one. She's about to turn 2 soon. And before starting homeschooling, I worked with children with autism, and I was in ABA therapy. So I've worked lots with kids, a lot in schools, a lot in daycares. So I've got lots of experience when it comes to schooling, non-schooling. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Okay, so before we get into like the nitty-gritty of everything, what would an average day be like for you guys for homeschooling? Because, you hear all kinds of things that, it only takes 2 hours, and then you have the whole day to play. And then sometimes you hear that it's a lot of work and the kids get frustrated and, whatever. Help us dispel that myth. What is homeschooling like for your family?
For my family, it's going to look completely different than other families. So for us, it really depends on how the kids are doing, like what my schedule looks like, what my husband's schedule looks like. On a typical day, it's waking up, doing breakfast, doing some, playing. Right now, my kids are really young, so homeschooling in the sense it's very unstructured. But keeping in schedules of when we eat, when we have our naps, like that's very important with that in us in our typical day. Other than that, we just play and go by what the kids want to do. If it's sunny outside, we go outside. If it's rainy, we stay inside and we figure out something else. And I really do child-led type of homeschooling. So typically my son, whatever he wants to do, like he leads the day. So whatever makes him happy.
Okay, so would that be sort of the equivalent, like I want to try to relate it to the different access to education, I guess, so people kind of get an idea of what that equates to. So would that be sort of, in your world, the equivalent of sort of the child-led learning that's now implemented in the Ontario curriculum for kindergarten? Would that kind of be the same thing where they learn based on what their interests are that day?
So from my background, like I sort of have a mix of the ABA principles, which is applied behavior analysis. So I do have a routine set in, which is fully by my needs and what I feel is necessary for them when they should eat, how they should nap. And then there's part of the child-led, which is, if they want to watch some space stuff and they want to watch some rockets launch for 3 days, I'm going to do that. And if they don't, then I'm not going to do that. And they want to go outside, then we're going to do that. So it really depends. We do a lot of unschooling. So we don't sit around and we don't do sheets. But if Gabriel looks at a sheet and watches me do it, because I do have a lot of that ABA type worksheets at home. If he sees it and he wants to do it, then yeah, we're going to do it. And so that would be the schooling type. So for us, we are very eclectic, but some families can have just unschooling or the Montessori or there's so many curriculums. It's amazing the variety you can come up with that suits your family.
Right. So you actually just touched on 2 points that I wanted to chat about today. So besides the homeschooling chat that we're going to do, one of the other schooling chats that we're going to do is with a family who solely does unschooling in their family. And that one is very new to me, so I'm excited to kind of learn about that. It just sounds very, I don't know what lack of a better term would be. It just sounds very like non-structured. I just don't understand how it all works, I guess, kind of thing. So that's one of the other chats we're going to do. We'll also do a traditional, like elementary kind of school chat with families there. But you touched on curriculum. So can you talk to us? So because of the age and stage that you're at right now, you maybe don't necessarily use curriculum every day. Forward thinking, do you see yourself going towards the unschooling path, or would you just subscribe to more of a set curriculum, which we traditionally think of as traditional homeschooling, I guess?
To be honest, I do use a curriculum. The curriculum I use is the Ontario curriculum to sort of make sure that I'm keeping them on par with what their peers are going to be like. So I do use that as a guideline. I would say, and then I sort of take all the other curriculums and sort of go around there of what sort of suits us. So sometimes it's more rigidity, especially if they're having a more difficult time, they need a little bit more structure. And sometimes it's not. You might have too much rigidity. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
Well, no, more just about the different curriculums, whether or not you feel that as they get older, will you sort of gravitate more to the homeschooling part or the sort of unschooling part where it's not necessarily structured every day and this learning doesn't need to necessarily happen within a set time frame, I guess, is what most of us would probably consider traditional, homeschooling.
I understand. Which my thought was thinking about, it really depends on where my kids are at. Like if they want to go to school coming like high school, then I will give them that opportunity and I will throw out my curriculum out the window and sort of see where they're at. When it comes to later on for university, I may have to prepare them for university type of curriculum. So at that point, I mean, we're talking 10, 18 years from now. So I don't do that research now just because I don't know what the curriculums are then. But I'm really gearing it towards in 18 years, I don't know what Gabriel's going to be interested in or what Alex is going to be interested in. And I just want to sort of leave it free to them to choose. But in my plan, I hope to continue just every year I do a curriculum basically.
Right.
And I set it up per month of what our topic is like. And then I let them do their own thing with that topic.
So you touched on high school, which is a great, that actually leads into one of the questions I had for you anyways. So if a family decided, your family decided that they wanted to continue homeschooling into high school, I think a lot of us think I think that homeschooling is really probably just kindergarten to grade 8, but certainly you bring up a very good point. Obviously it's not, because other people are homeschooling further into the education system than just grade 8. So are there supports available for your family should you choose to homeschool through high school?
Yes, definitely. Facebook right now has been a great resource on finding lots of people around my area, even not in my area, but like-minded people that can help me find resources and sort of lead me along the way. And Hamilton has some great, and even Ancaster has some great Ontario homeschooling resources on Facebook. And tons of people on there are very willing to provide all sorts of help, their personal experience, their resources. I myself have shared many resources with, right now, again, my kids are really young, so it's early learners, but when it comes to that age, I'm sure I'll have lots of resources for high school and even hopefully university.
Right. So as a homeschooling mom, do you rely on those groups for a lot of support and those days where it's just like, oh my gosh, because I can only imagine, like the rest of us, do you find yourself coming to those days where I'm just like, I I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing this today. Sorry. What are those groups? Do those groups provide a lot of support for homeschooling families?
Tons. And even seeing other people get support over the similar topics that you yourself have questioned, whether it's an issue, whether it's not an issue, like what's the deal? Is this my deal? Is this just my family? Like lots and lots of support. Pinterest has also been a great resource for me just to get ideas on, especially when you're doing homeschooling. Like the hardest thing I find is, what do I do today? Like, even if I do my curriculum, what do I do today? Like, what is my plan? And Pinterest, I have 365 days of crafts planned out. At any point throughout the day, I want crafts, I go to it. So Pinterest, Facebook have been great resources for homeschooling moms, and teachers out there. They're all over Facebook. They're all over Pinterest, putting all that information out there. So all you have to do is look for it. It's there.
Right. And I think those groups too probably would help. I know in my own area, our family doesn't homeschool. I've considered it many times, but I think it would be my own death sentence if I did it. But I do know that in my area, there are a lot of families who are choosing homeschooling now, and that number is growing exponentially every year. I would think those groups too would really be a place to help you understand that, yes, this is the best choice for our family. We're not alone here. And there's maybe some issues with traditional schooling that more and more families are choosing to craft their children's education, right?
What honestly, Jen, what I find most interesting is that there's a lot of, on these homeschooling groups, there's people that are not homeschooling at all, and they're just there to get the resources. And I was surprised to see how many people would just come on and they're like, I just took my kids out of school and I'm homeschooling. Like, what do I do now? And people are inundated with support and help, and it's astonishing. It's surprised me, even having debated that idea myself and coming to that, like, yeah, this 5 years ago? No, there's no way I thought I was homeschooling. No way. I thought totally put my kids in school, and then life did not lead me that way. So, whether it's your kids now, whether you do it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, however old your kid is, it's really possible. It's amazing what people are doing nowadays. Like you said, the number is growing so quickly.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. And I think that's why I'm really excited to have this chat and to share this chat, because I think had I have been in a different stage when my children were starting school, I can see myself possibly choosing that path. But that was also, I don't even know, 7, 8 years ago, maybe. And I don't believe that there was, not around here anyways, that kind of resources. So I'm really, really excited about this chat, and I'm hoping that this will help some families really understand whether or not homeschooling sounds like a good fit for their family. So thank you for sharing that with us. Testing. So we talk about homeschooling, and in this traditional school, testing is a requirement to prove that the children are learning. When you homeschool, how do you have to prove that you're teaching your children?
No. So when you look up the legal guidelines on what you have to do, and all you have to do is write a note to them or their legal document saying that I intend to homeschool. And if at any case, at any point, someone comes to you with, what's the word? I apologize.
Okay.
With a concern about your child or their behavior or anything, then someone will come and inspect how your homeschooling is. So they recommend that you have something to show that you're doing something. And this is my personal opinion. If you're a diligent homeschooler and you care about how your kids are doing, there's going to be some sort of way you're going to be able to prove, hey, look, this is the research I'm doing. This is where my kids are at. Whether you test or not, it doesn't matter. Like, testing is just, my philosophy on testing is just a way to know whether the child has, in that time and place, whether they've retained that information. In 5 years from now, it might be different. So my philosophy on testing is very different. But let's say for high school, that my son's going to have to do the grade 10 testing. And my daughter's going to have to do the same. And even for high school, if they want to go to university. So they're 3 too. I'm now looking at those guidelines, making sure that I'm on par with the Ontario government and their guidelines of what they are expecting. So doing my due diligence, I want to make sure I know that information, and any homeschooler should know that information. So that's just going online. They provide all that information on there. It's a very easy to do that homeschooling research. So it's very doable, very doable.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know, because I was thinking kind of further on, then how, if there's no testing further on to prove that they're reaching milestones, would they be able to get into university and stuff? But you've kind of addressed that yes, there is eventually, there is some kind of proof that you have to prove that they're, at a certain level of learning. So that's like the not fun side, the testing. Talk to me about trips, because I think people think that when you homeschool, you just, sit at home and do nothing all day, and your kids are socially isolated. That's the big myth of homeschooled kids, right? Is that you're raising socially isolated children. Talk to me about trips. How do you guys do trips?
Okay, so about every month, I try to do a topic about every month of what we want to focus on. And then I try and do 1 to 2 trips realistically. So every other week we try and go on like a big trip. So that's the science center or any museum around here. And I require a trip to be longer than 20-minute drive from home. So that's not just going out into the woods. That's not just going out to the near library. Like, it's out there, something that we don't normally do. And we only do probably once a year on the same month. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Every, January, I want to go to the science center every year at the same time of every year and learn something new. This year, what we're doing is we're going to the maple, learning about maple syrup and their festival. And we're going to go see the sap trees and learning how to make the sap. And right now on our daily stuff, we're focusing about spring. And later down the road, we'll do other really fun stuff. But trips, I love it. It gets me super excited because you get you get out of the house and you do super fun stuff, and it's out of your normal routine. So those are the days that I lose my structure and routine's out the window. You just do whatever you want to do. And kids love it. Yeah. They learn a lot.
So going back to your Facebook groups that you talked about before, I know some families sort of in my area who homeschool do a lot of their school trips together with their group. So that works on the socialization and more sort of like the school structured trip where you're going together in a big group to learn together. Do you guys have those kind of resources that you use in your family when you do trips, or do you find that it's a lot of, for your family, just your unit going out?
So right now because my kids are really young, it's just us, and we're at the initial stages of developing a community. So I'm really trying to find, and I'm very honest with other mothers and other homeschooling moms, they all want the same, of someone that fits with my kids, right. Someone that will motivate my kids. So I'm at the initial stages of finding other people like-minded like myself, and we're just building relationships. And we hope that at some stage later on, we will go on those groups. And we've heard that many people do that, but currently that's in my dreams. I hope to do that. But right now it's just us and going on play dates. Like they're still very, very young, and it's hard enough just to keep them all together.
Yeah, totally. So if you're doing these trips, then one thought that comes to my mind is cost. Does it cost a lot more to homeschool your children versus traditional schooling?
Yes, a whole lot more, especially with 2. I mean, it really all depends on the family, because let's say the working mom putting 2 kids in daycare, is it really beneficial to put 2 kids in daycare or to stay at home and save that money? Would doing trips, make that more expensive? Would, it really depends on what works for you. So you've said before about your experience about how it would, it might be the end of you. And you really have to play that. You have to take that into consideration. So me, myself, like I do a lot of art. I love art. So that keeps me sane, and I influence my kids on art. And everybody's going to have their own type of style on how they're going to do things. So for us, it's sort of go as we go. And later on, the field trips and all that stuff, it will get more structured, but I've heard amazing things of people doing amazing projects together, building like super cool science projects. So the possibilities are there. People are really out there. So I definitely see us getting there later on.
Well, probably more so. That's the one thing, not the one thing, and not definitely not the only thing, but that's the one thing I really tend to appreciate about homeschooling is the learning is so crafted towards the children, right? Like you talked about science experiments. I wish my kids in school would be able to build that volcano that we used to build when we were in school, right? And show the eruption and the chemical reaction and stuff. They don't do stuff like that anymore. If you homeschooled, you could create those experiences and those experiments to no end, right? That's the one thing I really, really, really appreciate about homeschooling is I love the crafted nature of the learning and how you can influence so many different ways with your own experiences and your bringing up too, the things that you feel are missing from when you were being raised. So that's really cool. What would you say in your experience to date are some benefits for your family specifically on homeschooling?
What are some benefits of homeschooling? We don't have to get up at a set time. We don't have to do things at a set time. Like what really flows our day is how we're feeling when we're hungry. If they're more hungry, like they don't have to leave the house. Like they can sit and eat and be ready for learning. So that's really the benefit that we've gotten. Our son, who I speak a lot about, he was a preemie, so he's got a lot of other needs going on, and keeping him at home has really allowed us to sort of have a lot more control and meet him where he needs. So I keep going back again, like it really all depends on where you are and what you want, and you can really do however you want to do with it. It's limitless. There are really no guidelines. If you want your kids to be at home and not teach them, like, I'll be honest, you can do that. You really can, but that's not going to help your kids out. But you know what I mean? Like,
well, really meeting them at their age and stage. I mean, you talked about Gabe and you know, excelling in some areas and needing support, more support in others. He wouldn't get that in a traditional school system. He would be put in the block just like everyone else and pushed forward. But because you're homeschooling, you can really meet him where he's at in all of those different needs, which is really, really cool for learning and growing in life. That's awesome. So the opposite side of that then, have you found any drawbacks for your family at this point to homeschooling? Besides the days where I can only imagine, like the rest of us, you're like, ooh, I can't do this anymore.
I will be honest, we don't get breaks very often. So that's really hard. And that's where I say of like, you gotta learn to be honest with yourself and learn to know where you are at. So being a homeschooling mom, at first it was really hard. And I really had to ask myself some really hard questions about what I wanted to do, what I was motivated to do. And those days that I didn't want to do anything, it no longer became about me. It became about them and on the bigger, you know, the big picture. So it's taught me to be a better person, but it's hard because it's every day. It's not just, you don't just get to wake up. I mean, whether you work or not, like you don't just get to go and separate. Like right now that they're out of the dollar store for the half an hour that we have. And when they come back, as soon as we're done, that, you know, my life continues. So this is actually a really nice break. It's really exciting.
So we shouldn't be talking. You should just be sitting back, relaxing.
It's so, I can't tell you how nice it is. So especially when you go out, you meet other moms, like it is that much more enjoyable when you're like, I'm kid free. Like it's just even 20 minutes a day is so amazing, but it takes a lot of discipline. It took me a really long time to get here. And I'm finally now really happy with it. And I'm now very in control and organized, but it's a hard road to get there.
Yeah. So we kind of touched on it before. Can you talk to me about, excuse me, this myth that permeates and surrounds homeschooling, that homeschooled children are so lacking socialization? Can you talk to me a little bit about that? And
you met Gabriel?
Yeah.
You met Gabriel? He's, so, okay. So I totally get that. And Gabriel has had instances, and I talked solely about Gabriel because Alex is just learning how to talk. But he doesn't know how to talk to other kids that much. I mean, his speech is really accelerated, and that's out of my doing. Like I specialized before a lot on speech, so he can talk to adults, no problem, and he can communicate. But when he's talking to other kids his age, he can't meet them at his level, so that is difficult. So I've had to find kids that are older than him to be able to meet his speech levels and understanding levels. And even then, his understanding levels are not the same because cognitively, he's not there. His speech is really advanced, but cognitively, he's still 3. Like he's still learning that stuff. Whereas a 5-year-old has learned a lot of these principles. So it really depends on where you are and how much. Like I make it's like always make a lot of play dates. Like get them out there and play with other kids. That's the biggest advice I can say of like getting them out there with their peers.
Okay. And I would assume that as a homeschooling parent, that as you progress and they get older, that's just going to be a natural probably reaction with homeschooling anyways, because like you said, you seek out like-minded families and individuals to want to do things with them so that you're not alone on this journey. So I would think it's just a natural progression in homeschooling anyways.
You would be surprised. So it really depends on how far away from the norm you want to go.
Okay.
So sometimes, let's say Gabriel later on will get involved in soccer sports. And let's say there's one kid there that, things might not flow the same way that it does for us.
Yep.
He needs to still have that experience, whether we like it or not. He needs to have that. So whether it's like-minded or not, he needs to deal with non-like-minded people. So as much as we want to support, our home environment is to support. But as long as we have that, then we're okay. The outside, he'll just learn it.
Yeah.
Because the best way is for him to learn it. There's no stopping it. I can't keep him in a bubble as much as I try.
Well, that's just life experiences, right? Life experiences. Yeah. That's part of life. Yeah. So if you ever decided that homeschooling wasn't working for your family anymore, or you touched on it before, if your kids ever come to you and say, Mom, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go to school like, so-and-so around the corner. What supports are available to your family, or what's the process with that? Because I can't fathom that you would just call up the school and say, I've been homeschooling for 7 years and now my kids want to come to school. What's his teacher's name? And we'll drop him by tomorrow. Like, what is it, right? How does that work?
I'll totally be honest. I am not knowledgeable in that area. I have not read anything around that. Of what I've heard, it's a very simple process of, basically calling them up and been like, hey, I'm homeschooling. And then they sort of put them where it's sort of, a grade they would be at, and then see where it goes. So it is very simple. Even to homeschool, you just write them a letter. Like it's really not that hard. Mm-hmm. Even to take them out, you just take them out and write them a letter and say, hey, we're not going to school anymore. We're homeschooling. That's it. It's done. Right.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So you talked about your husband. Your husband has taken your kids to the store with you, right? Or has taken the kids to the store so that you can sit down and have this chat with me. Does your husband participate in the homeschooling as well? Or is that solely just your role in your family?
Yes, of course he takes role. I mean, even right now, watching them and taking them to the store, like that's part of homeschooling. He's learning life skills. He's learning the exchange of money. He's learning that he's getting something new. He's getting something because he broke it. So we've actually fixing it. So, and everything we do, we incorporate it. So yes, he's very much a big part. I mean, even the fact, like, we're the stereotypical. He goes out and works, and I stay at home, and I take care of the family. But that alone is huge. Like, I want to buy a curriculum. Honey, I need $100. Like, you gotta, yeah, okay, sure. That's for our kids. So of course 100%. We're in this, both of us, 100%.
Right. Very cool. I love this chat has been excellent. And I had kind of mentioned before that probably when we get off of this chat, I'll think of 5 more questions that I want to ask you. But if the families watching this show were to only leave with 3 things, so that can be what your thoughts on homeschooling, how you do it in your family, advice you have to offer on people who are thinking it or already in it. If you could leave people with 3 things, what would those 3 things be?
That's really tough to imagine 3 things. Okay, so be patient with yourself, with your family, with your husband, with honestly with yourself, because the worst thing is thinking you're doing a really poor job, but you're doing a really excellent job. So, and learning about yourself. So always be patient with yourself, with your kids. And if you're not on the homeschooling journey, just for a second, imagine what it could be like homeschooling, just for a second. Just, imagine yourself not having that job or not putting your kids in daycare, and imagine what it could look like, because you're surprised. Like, I was surprised. I thought I was going to be that career driven. Like, I have a BA, I have 10 years of school behind me, and I'm at home not working. So I never thought I'd be doing homeschooling. But I'm so happy. So just for a second, think about what life could look like, because you never know how much happier you could be. You never know how much happier your kids could be. And that's really it. Like, do what makes you happy. That's the third thing. Do what makes you happy.
Excellent. So your first point alone, I think, is exactly why I could not be a homeschooling parent. Even though I get the rest of that, and I love the relaxed attitude, and I love the different ways to learn things and stuff like that. Patience is not something I was granted with. I love my children, and I love my husband, and I love myself, but I do not have patience for any of those three.
It's hard. Honestly, I've learned a lot about myself. Like, I thought I was super patient, especially having tons of experience with kids. I didn't think I'd do any of these stuff with my kids, but with your kids, it's a different story. It's a whole different story. You may be a great teacher, but to your own kids, they're in your face all the time, in the bathroom all the time, in the shower. So it's it's not something to be taken lightly, but yeah, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, patience is key. I can definitely see that. Well, that's awesome, Liz. I sincerely hope that the families watching this show will, at the very least, learn something about a different stream of education. So if you weren't aware of what homeschooling was about, this is Liz and her family's sort of journey with homeschooling. And as she said at the beginning, every family kind of experiences it differently and does it differently. And that's totally okay, because there's not really a lot of rules around how your family's journey with homeschooling should look like. So Liz, thank you very much for chatting with us and sharing your story with us today.
Oh, thank you very much. I really had a great time. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.